Hello, Sydney. Everybody, thank you so much on behalf of Red Hat. Thank you for being with us today. I normally open up my presentations with a joke. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I have a 9-year-old at home that gave me this. This is Flat Stanley. This is part of the education system in the United States, in case you were curious. All right, she's going to be very excited about that photo. So part of what I wanted to spend today talking about is Red Hat's story, not necessarily just about the technology. Yes, we're a technology company. It's really more about how we're helping companies, what we're able to do, and how we're able to help customers achieve success. I spend a ton of time, between airports, traveling internationally sometimes, meeting with customers, hearing their stories, and so I want to share a few of those with you today. Okay, so I think to start, I think technology being part of everything, everyone in the room probably knows that here. One quote I think best exemplifies that is a quote from the CIO of Marriott. His name is Bruce Hoffmeister. What he said at one executive event was that he was having this argument with somebody in the business, and the person was arguing how IT is not really as useful as Bruce thought. And so Bruce said, okay, if you don't think IT is that useful, try turning it off. I think that very quickly ended the discussion, because IT is no longer just something the business drags around with it. It's no longer just a partner to the business. It is part of the business. It's driving the business. So I think that is the story to take away, is that technology is no longer just a tag along. Now healthcare is, or these various different industries are being modernized using technology. So healthcare is one, helping to modernize and treat patients in a better way. Maybe it's engaging with emergency medical services when you need it. The education system, Flat Stanley here, representing the US, we can share photos and stories of different cultures and travel through that. And also the banking sector, engaging with new customers and new markets. So let's talk about how some CEOs view technology. Now, actually, when I say some, I mean most. 90% of CEOs believe that technology is going to significantly impact the way that they go to market with their business. I strongly believe, I mean this sincerely, the other 10% of CEOs either aren't paying attention or are not going to be CEOs for very long. Every single customer I talk to, every single customer believes that technology is going to be central to their strategy. And so a lot of people like to talk about this in terms of the phrase digital transformation. I think a lot of people have fatigue from that phrase, but I think it's really important just to understand how we have this impact across the industry, that most CEOs and most executives recognize that, and this is a conversation that's happening at the board level. Okay, so Gartner, sort of in support of this, basically says if you're going to wait to undertake this transformation, if you don't take this seriously, it's going to take you longer to catch up. And not only is it going to take you longer to catch up, your competitors are going to blow by you. This is a real opportunity to embrace emerging technology to figure out how it can help you drive the business. That's basically what they're saying. The gap is going to continue widening between those customers who choose to embrace technology and those that lag behind. So some customers that we work with, one customer in particular is Macquarie. I had the pleasure of meeting them yesterday. Again, I met them at Summit earlier this year. They were an Innovation Award winner. I want you to hear the story in their words. So we have a quick video that we like to show. Let's roll the video.
We're living in a world of constant change. Change is the new normal, and the future will belong to the fast.
Macquarie Bank is a financial institution that is working in the Australian market. Our mission is to be able to deliver retail, business banking and wealth products to every single customer in Australia.
Our business challenges were really that we're a digital-first organisation. We didn't want to compete just against regular banks. We wanted to compete against the last app that you used, Uber or Amazon or eBay. That meant we had to think differently. We had to use software and technologies and ways of working that weren't part of our regular DNA.
Red Hat OpenShift allows us to go faster to market. We have microservices We have standard governance and deployment procedures and processes that enables us to reduce the friction in moving our solutions from development, test to production. We are also using Red Hat Cluster Storage Solution, Red Hat Cloud Forms, Red Hat JBoss middleware, and Red Hat Ansible. Today, we have the ability of moving our solutions and microservices on Red Hat OpenShift in a couple of seconds. That's the efficiency gains that we have had with implementing these platforms.
The impact is going to be massive on business banking, wealth management, and the personal banking areas, thanks to Red Hat technologies.
All right. It was a terrific story. I love hearing it in their words. I think when most people in Australia hear the term, hear the business name Macquarie, they probably think about somebody who services, generally speaking, well-established, wealthy clients. They have a reputation of being the millionaire's factory, as I'm told. And so they recognized that they needed to enter a new market, engage with a different type of customer. You heard Richard talk about that. They wanted to have an experience similar to how you'd use an Uber or an Amazon. They want to change the way that people engage, make it so easy that you can sign up for an account via your mobile device. That's really a compelling vision. Now, to do that, I think the theme of today is the impact of the individual. Those types of changes, especially in an organization as large as Macquarie, they don't happen on their own. They're not just spontaneous where you can just set a vision and then everyone just follows behind it. You really need a catalyst for that vision. So they brought in Luis Iguina, who I believe he's here today. I'm not sure if he's here. But he was the catalyst from BBVA, now their newly appointed Chief Digital Officer, who brought in and really put at the center of the ecosystem. The ecosystem is, most people, when you think about those terms, especially at Red Hat, it tends to mean technology and ISV partners. For them, they built a whole ecosystem around a new culture. So technology is just a way to implement that new culture, but really the culture was the focus, changing their processes, the way that they did business, the way that they viewed how they're going to develop new technologies, and even what technologies they're looking at, how that's going to push the boundaries of the bank and other parts of the bank internally. And so it was only through that vision from Luis and working with Richard and Rajay Ray, who you saw also in the video, that they were able to start delivering those new technologies. So they mentioned in the video that they use OpenShift. Like I said, just enabling technology from Red Hat. Really, it's around creating this different culture, delivering things that really matter to their users. And I think the quote that stands out to me from Lewis was that your legacy is when you release. So Lewis has this vision that you need to release to make a difference and deliver value to the business. And so their delivery times went from anywhere between, call it 6 months or so, and they were able to bring that down to not just days or hours, but minutes in terms of when they could release. Now, that makes a huge difference to their ability to deliver value to the business and also their rate of change and their speed. So again, I'm not sure if Lewis is here today, but it's such a privilege to work with you, and thank you for being a Red Hat customer. Now, Macquarie is considered to be one of the top digital banks in Australia, and it's really their innovative work that allows them to be considered one of those top banks. Now, their rate of change can be measured in minutes. Some other innovative partners that Red Hat has, like Amazon, they measure their rate of change in terms of seconds. So the average rate of change for Amazon is somewhere once every 13 to 14 seconds. Now, for most customers, it's just like what Max said. You look at that and you're like, that's not really that relevant to me. In terms of 13 seconds, who cares about that? Right? But I think what it's really around is around how quickly can you deliver value to the business? How quickly can you respond to security threats in your environment? Can you get that pushed out right away? Do you have to wait 6 weeks? Or can you do it immediately when you know it's there? I know that for many of our customers, especially since we have things like the Equifax breach that are top of mind, everyone's sort of re-examining that process, that policy, and their internal hygiene associated with how often they patch and release security. So the ability to deliver value to the business is what makes you a high-performing organization, not just your ability to crank out changes in a rapid way. Oh, a little too far. So what I found, I've been at Red Hat for about 10 years. What I found is that one innovation has led to another. So most of you know Red Hat as being the Linux company. I've been to a zillion customer meetings. I don't even know how many at this point, probably over 1,000. And that is the one refrain I hear pretty consistently, which is that Red Hat is the Linux company. What are you guys doing that's new? Your stuff looks kind of crusty. What people don't realize is that we use our investments, which the company still has a major investment in Linux. We take that very seriously. We leverage that investment to innovate with these different communities. And so some of those innovations are, people using containers are a very hot topic today. Let me tell you, containers have been around for a very long time. Containers were around for at least a decade, if not more. And so we started creating a PaaS platform several years ago. That led to a reinvention of containers. That led to a complete reinvention of PaaS in the form of us refactoring OpenShift around these new, relevant, emerging technologies. So some other things that are relevant to a lot of my customers are that big data was a big investment that they made a few years ago. That has led into machine learning, and that's further leading into AI. And so that cycle never really ends for them, that there's always going to be something new on the horizon. It's the way emerging technology works. So these demands for efficiency, agility, and innovation require organizations to always look for those new technologies. That's where Red Hat comes into play, because that is part and parcel to what we do. A big goal and really the value that Red Hat helps deliver to the market is taking those emerging technologies and making them consumable for your enterprise, making it so that you can pass those security audits, that you have confidence in the reliability and security when it's deployed, and that it meets your performance requirements. So I think I mentioned what Red Hat was like 10 years ago when I first got here. The optimizing IT that you already have, yes, you can absolutely still do that. You have Solaris, great. We have Enterprise Linux. You have HPUX, AX. Yes, that's still a big part of our story. That was really the only part of the story that we talked about when I first got to the company. Now, since then, we've acquired JBoss. There's a whole middleware portfolio. We can do the same thing on the middleware side. And I think a big part of your journey towards not just digital transformation as a term, but your journey towards delivering value to the business in a better way, in a faster way, it's really based upon taking money out of your current budget and using that for innovation, really pushing that into that budget and shifting it over. So the next real stage of innovation I see customers undertaking is linking these different points of data. I hear so much about customers deriving value from data, connecting different data sources to derive insights from that. Really, that is an integration problem. It's also the case where you may want parts of your application to live in Amazon, in Google, in Azure, and you want to connect all these pieces together with something on-premise for a data store. That is an integration problem. So Red Hat made a big acquisition there with FuseSource a few years ago, and so now we have a real integration story. When it comes to deploying those infrastructure pieces across both, let's say, I think Amazon is probably the number one here. It's actually the number one everywhere, for being honest. Amazon is really the driver for a lot of public cloud infrastructure that I see. And so as you're deploying infrastructure to that, whether it's applications or just the infrastructure, just in terms of VMs, the thing is that you need to be able to understand what you're deploying there. You need to have links into automation to be able to deploy there. I've said it to a lot of customers, and I'll say it here again. Linking automation with deploying workloads into cloud is part and parcel to your success. If you're doing it without automation, it's going to be a challenge in the future. It's definitely something you're headed, that you're on a collision course for, I should say, disaster later. So understanding what you have out there, understanding your security and risk profile, that is also necessary. Nobody wants to know that you have things hanging out on Amazon that you're not aware of and that has access to your internal infrastructure. I think the last thing I really, I talked about it with Macquarie, I'll talk about it again with another one of our customers, is really building modern applications. Now, for so many businesses out there, they can already build applications. It's not the problem. The problem is it takes between 2 and 3 years sometimes to get the spec data out, to get all those requirements gathered, to finally get the team together to ready, aim, fire, and then maybe 3 years later you have something that solved a problem that was or was not relevant 3 years ago. That's not acceptable anymore. And so part of building a modern app is not necessarily just microservices-based and messaging-oriented. That's not what makes a modern app. What makes a modern app is really the process. And like I said with Macquarie, the culture has to sit right in the middle of that. Culture is really what drives a lot of these changes. I think everyone looks at the 12 steps to creating a cloudified app. That's only part of it. The other side is you really have to have the business to be able to support that. Okay, so with that, our Red Hat culture is deeply imbued in open source. Red Hat is the world's most successful purely open source company, and it's not even close. If you split out JBoss, our middleware business unit, into a separate company, they would be the second largest open source company in the world. And so we believe very deeply with every fiber in the company that it can possibly muster that being collaborative, being transparent, being open, these are just standards that they're not nice to haves, they're absolute requirements for the way Red Hat does business and goes to market. Now with that process, again, this is a strong cultural element. You need to be agile and continuous, but the focus is on rapid delivery, delivering value. Now, we are a technology partner. It's where we tend to focus. The two conversations that I tend to have in my travels, one is around rapid delivery and release. The other is around automation. And both of them, you can talk about rapid release in terms of what value is my application delivering to the business. You talk about the other one in terms of automation and how can I reduce my soft costs associated with the people and increase my reliability associated with my infrastructure. So I'd like to talk about modernizing existing apps. I think most people think about rewriting apps. Frankly, I have very few customers rewriting existing apps. It's usually a pretty low value opportunity. However, replatforming existing app is extremely palatable. I usually talk about that in terms of KeyBank. Now, KeyBank is one of the larger regional banks within the United States. They were an Innovation Award winner last year for Red Hat. What they did was, contrary to conventional wisdom is normally you're never going to touch your tier 1 app. It's your sacred cow. You have a whole team dedicated to it. Don't mess with it. They did exactly the opposite of that. They took their tier 1 app, their major moneymaker, and they took it and replatformed it into OpenShift with some automation around it. Now you'd say, what does that really give you? So first is their ability to deliver went from once or twice a year, maybe every 6 to 9 months, that went down to hours or minutes, right? Delivering features and capability updates to the platform. The second is that they allowed their front end to expand with workload. So probably again saying, well, does that really matter? It's a pretty static workload for a regional bank. When they went through M&A and they acquired First Niagara, their load for their front end literally tripled overnight. When they made the acquisition, their front end being able to auto-scale with those user requests meant that they were able to keep up with the load and keep active. Now, in the words of their CTO, direct quote, "Thank God for OpenShift." So that was a terrific quote. I try and use as much as I can. The second is around automating as much as possible. Now, I think the best way to articulate that story is with Red Hat's investment into network function virtualization and Verizon. Now, I think when most people think automation, you're thinking in terms of like toolkits like Chef and Puppet. That's only part of the story. Really, automation is driven by APIs and software-defined things. And so the network function virtualization movement within telco is really about taking all this old, crusty networking equipment they used to buy in terms of hardware and moving it into a software platform. And they're doing that to do both in terms of reducing cost for infrastructure and also to make themselves more agile and responsive to when they need and when they have to respond to demand for the infrastructure. They need this to push out 5G networks. It's not a nice to have, they absolutely need it. And so Red Hat has partnered with Verizon. They are the world's largest NFV deployment. I'm not sure if they're the largest or the second largest telco in the United States. Them and AT&T, it's kind of hard to tell from the commercials who's bigger. In terms of their network scope, it's enormous. So this is mission critical for them. We're a mission critical provider for telco. So that's a big part of our story with them. The next story I'd like to share is with the province of British Columbia. Now, this is more of a government-centric in Canada. Now, for those of you who work within the government, you're probably thinking like, does this story make sense? Typically, government's very slow moving. The province of British Columbia was exactly the same. It took anywhere between 2 and 3 years to procure and deliver applications. 3 years just to procure an application. Like I said, that can be very frustrating for the business being the government. And so the vision of Todd Wilson, again, that individual coming in, instantiating change, making it so that he really started to drive a cultural change and cultural shift within the government team. What he did was he had this vision of establishing Government 2.0. The point of Government 2.0 is that the government is not going to solve all of the government's problems. But there's a lot of citizens out there who are more than capable of helping to solve civic problems. And so what they did was they established the what I would call the platform to host on. They did that via OpenShift, and so that's publicly facing. All the nastiness can try and get in there. They can try and break security if they want. It's been secure for over a year, and so in addition to that, what it really drove was the ability to deliver applications on a very short time frame. So if you're a developer, you just go in, pick what toolkits you want, and fire away. Less than 30 seconds later, you had your entire environment created. Now, as a civic developer, that's really the kind of environment you want. You're not going to send a request to the government and wait 2-point-something years to get your things. That's not how it works. So what they want to do is create a rapid response environment so that citizen developers could come in. The second half to that story is that they created what's called the BC Developer Exchange. It's a developer exchange that they host at bcdevexchange.org, if you want to check it out. The idea is that they set up bounties for certain projects that are around civic action, and then that gets delivered and hosted on top of OpenShift. So one example of one of those projects was the emergency medical system. I think in the States it was a thing. You used to have this commercial with a keychain like I've fallen and I can't get up. Is that a thing here? I think it was. And the idea is that now you can have that app on your phone where you can say I've fallen and I can't get up. That's something that's on your phone, and that will alert EMS to come to your location and respond to you. So it's a very powerful story. They can deliver those applications within 2 to 3 months. So in terms of the government's responsiveness to civic demand, what they need, what their users are asking for, and the citizens of the province, it makes a huge difference. And it's really just started. I mean, they just started, this whole thing. They started hosting about a year ago. It's really kicked into action within the last 6 months. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. Okay, so I'll talk for a minute about what makes Red Hat special. And so every software vendor on earth, we'll talk to you about the first one, talking about gathering business requirements, driving innovation. Absolutely, Red Hat does that. I'm a big part of that process. The entire field team is a big part of that process. And that's really what we want to do. We want to take your requirements. We want to solve realistic business problems for you. Now, where Red Hat is different is that we are a purely open source company. Every technology, every product that we ship has an open source community behind it, and it's fully open source when we ship it. What that means is that it forces us to be collaborative, transparent, and really what we're doing is driving so much of that innovation that's going on in the open source community. We're driving that upstream. It allows us to work with customers, partners, and SIs like Deloitte, for example. It allows us to partner there and then solve a business problem upstream, and then deliver you a product that solves a problem within your data center or within cloud, wherever you're using it. Now, these different communities are the catalyst for innovation. So communities, that could mean anything. It could mean, just like I said, around partners, upstream, customer communities. We have, for example, in the States, we have these roundtables within certain sectors of industry. I think those are really compelling. That's where you gain a lot of value around trying to solve a similar problem, and then having a place to collaborate with it. It only works within open source. And so Red Hat, being the leader in open source innovation, we're the ones being the catalyst for creating those communities, not necessarily just creating them, but helping to drive them and helping make them successful. It's a big part about our approach, and it's really all that combined leads to the community-powered innovation that I spent a lot of time talking about. Now, open source software is really driving that next wave of innovation. Things like cloud. Cloud would not exist without open source. Every single one of those public clouds that you can name, they have so much open source in their stack. I wish they would call it out. They don't necessarily do that. So much of it is backed by open source. And so because of that, So much of what you're doing is being driven by the providers. For example, one of these communities that we talked about is Kubernetes. That's something that we were Google's Tech Partner of the Year in 2014. We have a very strong position in not just the viability of Kubernetes, but what its future is in terms of positioning multi-cloud and being hybrid. Now, cloud wouldn't exist without open source. Mobile interfaces wouldn't without open source. Social media would not exist without open source. I mean, you can literally go down not just this list, but almost any piece of technology, all the way down to my phone. That's powered by Android. That would not exist without open source. So I think open source is really part and parcel to so much development that's going on, and it's really because it's the foundation of all these new OSs and tools. Red Hat has a strong position in helping to bring these things to market and helping you to consume them. Now, these let's say these technologies are having impacts on industries like I talked about healthcare at the beginning, talked about telco, talked about the government. Open source is viable everywhere. This isn't just like an industry-specific thing. It's not just being adopted by telco. Open source is ubiquitous, it's powerful, and it is driving the technological world as we know it. Okay, so now I want to talk about the process. So this is something that is different. Again, this is what makes Red Hat special. We participate and we're the catalyst for communities upstream. It's so important for Red Hat to be relevant within those upstream projects. A lesson I've learned from being at Red Hat for a decade plus is that we don't ship anything that we don't support. It sounds like a little thing. It's really easy to just say that you're an open source company, to take what's in the upstream community and just repackage it and put your name on it. There's a lot of companies that do that. It's candidly not that interesting to an end user, because when you have a problem, you want to be able to talk to somebody who has a major investment in that technology. Red Hat does not ship anything we don't support. We participate and we're a major leader in every single community that we're a part of. And so in this, we talk about the 1 million+ projects. Red Hat does not ship 1 million+ projects. Don't take that away. But really what we try and figure out is we try and figure out what communities are vibrant, what communities are viable in the future, what's going to future-proof you, so that way in 5 years, 10 years, you're not having to re-platform every single time. We try and make these longer-term bets by sort of testing the viability and then driving these communities to success. And so with that, a big part of Red Hat and the emerging technology portfolio as it stands, as most of you are aware, emerging technology it sort of follows the Unix model of one small tool to do one job really well. Well, the thing is, emerging technology does not necessarily do one job really well. You're talking about you doing hundreds of jobs really well. And so it really drives that integration of all these multiple technologies together. You talk about these different parts and components of OpenShift. It's really easy to break it down that way. Really, what you don't care about all these different components. You want one thing that works together seamlessly, that doesn't have all these integration issues that are so common with the upstream communities. They generally don't care about each other. Now then we go through a stabilization process where we really sit down and talk about, or we look at, what are the ways that we can harden the source code? What are the ways that we can make sure that we help our customers achieve compliance with the source code? How do we make it consumable, and how do we make sustaining engineering effort around it? So generally, for almost all of our products, we have a multi-year life cycle. Even with the most emerging tech like OpenStack, a lot of our technologies have a 5-year life cycle. RHEL has up to a 13-year life cycle. It's really around taking those community bits and putting a sustaining engineering effort around it to make sure that you don't need to re-platform necessarily every year. Trying to spare you that pain. I've personally been through that pain, and now that I've been at Red Hat, I can really appreciate the sustaining engineering work that goes into it. Okay, so all these things we talked about, from community projects to enterprise products, from open source communities to our customers, to our partners, from traditional technologies to today's innovative ones, to the ones we have yet to implement, they're all connected, and they all have to integrate and interact. Now, innovative products, projects, partnerships, they push these disruptive ideals in organizations and businesses further, faster, stronger, better. And so the idea is that we want to not attack stagnant competitors, but we want to leave them in the dust. We want to show them that open source can drive new technologies and drive our customers in better ways. And so that's why we must keep moving forward. I think this is our last slide. I'm almost done. Got 20 seconds left. Red Hat is uniquely positioned for this journey because of our position as an open source leader. We can help you deliver this. Please partner with us. I don't think of our customers as customers. Really, it's around a partnership, understanding what your problems are, and helping you to deliver. And because our portfolio is so much broader than just Linux, we can solve a very wide variety of problems now. This is something that's baked into Red Hat DNA, and we've been doing it for 20 plus years now. So with that, thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.